Hello everyone and welcome back to TowerGate. It is TowerGate day number 1153, 1153, Saturday, June the 6th, 2020. Thank you so much for tuning in. Okay, so I want to finish up today on Rodentstein. Rodentstein. Going to finish up on Rodentstein, and then I want to talk about a very interesting article and interview Paul Sperry did. An interview he did with Lou Dobbs about a story he wrote back in 2017. We'll get to that next after we finish with Rodentstein. And then there's just a couple other things I think you'll find somewhat humorous, or it's going to drive you nuts, that's for sure. So let's go ahead and get to it. So, a very key, one of several key questions that unfortunately was not followed up on by Lindsey Graham in the hearings on Wednesday with Rodentstein is there is a point in the questioning where Lindsey Graham says to Rodentstein that you signed off on a warrant application in June of 2017 to get Carter Page warrant renewed. If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application? And Rodentstein says, no, I would not. Very important. Now, I'm sure that Durham's people will either watch that hearing or will certainly get the transcripts to that hearing. And that is going to prove to be a very, very important point, because it's going to tell us one of two things. Either Rodentstein is telling the truth, and I have a rough time believing that's true, and in which point, if he is telling the truth, then that would tell you that there was a massive conspiracy, and that Rodentstein was being kept out of the loop in this conspiracy. But I find it very difficult to believe based on everything that we've gone through in the last 2 days. I think it's much more likely that we're going to find out that Rodentstein knew a lot more than what he's letting on, and that this answer to Lindsey Graham was a lie. One more time, Lindsey Graham to Rodentstein. You signed a warrant application in June of 2017 to get the Carter Page warrant renewed. If you knew then what you know now, would you have signed the warrant application? No, I would not. Now, Rodentstein admits that he knew in August of 2017 there was no collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign. Now, he makes this admission, and once he makes this admission, this is literally the setup to the knockout punch. It's the setup question to the knockout punch. But they never ask the follow-up question. Rodentstein admits in questioning that he knew in August of 2017 there was no collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign. What should have been the very next question? The very next question should have been, well, if you knew in August of 2017 that there was no collusion between the Russians and the Trump campaign, then why did you allow the Mueller investigation to continue for another 17 months? You learn in August of 2017, Mr. Rodentstein, that there is no Trump-Russia collusion, yet you allow Uncle Bob, who you appointed, and who you let write his own scope memos, and yet you allowed the thing to continue for 17 more months after you knew there was no Trump-Russia collusion. Why did you do that, Mr. Rodentstein? That's the checkmate question. That's the ball game. But they never asked the question. You're going to see a lot of that throughout these Lindsey Graham hearings, I can assure you. This is a show. It's a show designed to get some sound bites for Lindsey Graham and some of the Republicans running for re-election to protect the deep state. But you already knew that. Now, let's just go to a few other facts before we move on. Keep these things in mind because we still have the Durham investigation. And I'm certain that Durham, his people, are going to get the transcripts. And when they get the transcripts, here are some of the things that they are going to learn. Rodentstein denied that he knew that the FBI field office wanted to close the investigation into General Flynn on January the 4th, 2017. He denied knowing that. He denied knowing that the FBI had learned from Christopher Steele's primary subsource that Steele's dossier claims were untrue. Rodentstein said he did not remember if he knew that the Clinton campaign had paid for and commissioned the dossier at the time that he appointed Mueller. By May of 2017, he doesn't know who paid for the dossier? Well, hell, the FBI certainly knew. Don't you think he would bother to ask? It's the primary source of information to get the warrants to launch the investigations. Yet Rodentstein never asked where they get the information and whether or not it's been verified. Rodentstein said that he was unaware of the exculpatory statements made by Papadopoulos and Carter Page at the time he appointed Mueller. Rodentstein says that he didn't learn about Comey's leaked emails to his friend Daniel Richman until a week after Comey's firing. But once he did, he allowed the investigation opened by McCabe a week earlier to continue. And he was never asked about that either. Let's remember, Rodentstein authorized the Mueller investigation without any evidence. How do we know that? Well, we know that from Lisa Page. She testified under oath, quote, "There was no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign in Russia at the time of the Mueller appointment." In order to launch a special counsel investigation, there must be a predicate crime or some suspicion of a predicate crime, which would require some evidence, of which there was none. Rodentstein authorized the Mueller investigation without any evidence. Lisa Page testified there was no evidence of collusion between the Trump campaign and Russia at the time of Mueller's appointment. That's her sworn testimony. Never did anyone in those hearings put that to Rodentstein. Why? It's another one of those checkmate questions. I have about a dozen checkmate questions, and that's all. And if I would have only needed 2 minutes to question Rodentstein, and I would have had about a dozen checkmate questions. And in 2 minutes, he would have been cuffed and taken out of the room. And I'm not even a lawyer. What does that tell you? Is Rodentstein stupid? No. What does that mean? He's lying. You want more? How about this? Rodentstein was briefed by the FBI on April the 28th of 2017 and again on May the 23rd of 2017. The FBI told Rodentstein that Trump, and it was Comey specifically, that Trump was not a subject in those, he was not the subject, or he was not a suspect. The FBI told Rodentstein that Trump was not a suspect in those meetings. Both of those meetings, they told Rodentstein, no, Trump is not a suspect. But McCabe opens an investigation into Trump the day after Trump fires Comey, which would have only been about 9 days after the second meeting, the April 28th meeting, where Rodentstein was told that Trump was not a suspect. So on April 28th, Trump's not a suspect. Comey's telling Rodentstein that Trump's not a suspect, but then about a week later, Comey's fired, and the next day, McCabe opens an investigation into Trump. But even worse, Rodentstein, 6 days later, after McCabe opens his investigation into Trump for firing Comey, 6 days later, Rodentstein appoints Mueller as special counsel to investigate Trump. He was just told 2 weeks prior that Trump was not a suspect. He was told the week before that by the FBI that Trump was not a suspect. He's told 2 times, April 28th and May 23rd, Trump's not a suspect. And then he turns right around less than a month later and appoints Mueller, special counsel, to investigate Trump. After just being told 2 times with less than 30 days that Trump was not a suspect. Why didn't anybody ask him that question? And let's keep in mind, there is also a note from those meetings. That's why we know those meetings occurred, and there were notes taken. And in those meetings, one of those 2 meetings, I can't remember which one, and they're discussing these things. Then there's another series of, and we have the notes from that. Then, of course, there is the notes from the meeting where Rodentstein appoints Mueller as special counsel. And Weissman is in the meeting. Van Grack is in the meeting. A couple other DOJ lawyers, FBI lawyer there, James Baker is there. There's about a dozen people from DOJ, FBI, and at that time when Rodentstein appoints Mueller, he tells the investigative team, sitting right there, he says, leave no stone unturned. Leave no stone unturned. That's what Rodentstein told the Mueller team right after appointing Mueller. Leave no stone unturned when looking into Trump, investigating Trump. Not a single Republican in the hearings on Wednesday asked Rodentstein why he appointed Mueller to investigate Trump after he had just been told 2 times that Trump was not a suspect. Am I stupid? No. Are you stupid? No. Are the Republicans on the committee stupid? No. What does that tell us? Tells us that the Lindsey Grahamnesty hearings are bullshit. Let's see what Ron Johnson does. Maybe he'll do better. Now, let's talk about this story. I think some of you may have stumbled onto this as well. Fascinating. Fascinating. Especially coming in light of the first and second videos. Now we have the second video, undercover video from Project Veritas, where they're literally outlining this training program, that there's an actual training program that they have to train Antifa. And we know that Antifa is got connections to multiple funding sources, which are groups who receive funding from people like Soros and others. They're just a sort of a tentacle or another leg or another arm, however you want to look at it, of, you know, a swamp monster. And so with what we know now about what we've learned from Project Veritas in these 2 videos, and what we've been learning over the past since really in the past, I think for me it's been since 2016, but even in the last couple of weeks, 2 weeks or so since we've been watching these riots. Now, with this in mind, I want you to keep the following thing, I want to bring this into context, okay, because we're about to discuss an interview that Paul Sperry did with Lou Dobbs back in 2017, nearly 3 years ago. And Lou Dobbs had Paul Sperry on because he had just written an article And Lou Dobbs wanted to talk to Paul Sperry about the article he had just written. And in that article, Sperry says the following. He says that Obama, after leaving the White House, began building a shadow government using a radical Alinsky group that he founded called the OFA, which stands for Organizing for Action. And Paul Sperry describes this as an army of organizers and agitators. He says that they are a 501c4 corporation, and a 501c4 means that you cannot find out who the people are who are the donors who are making the contributions to the various agencies. And remember how they do this. They'll have various groups that they'll give money to, and then these groups then pass the money on to the guys who do the really nasty stuff. The direct money goes to the group who has the so-called good standing and the pretty face, and then they funnel the money into the agitators. They give the money to the organizers, and the organizers give the money to the agitators. And the organizers are paying for the training program where they train the agitators in Alinsky-style tactics, which are the very tactics used by Antifa. Sperry says that these are professional agitators. And at that time, back in 2017, Paul Sperry said that he knew and could confirm that there had been at least 32,000 people who had gone through this training, this 6-week training course where they teach you Alinsky tactics. And he said that there were 25,000 more that he knew that were getting ready, who were already enrolled and preparing to begin their 6-week training session. This is back in 2017. That would give you a total of 57,000 agitators who would have been trained by the end of 2017. Sperry says that Obama is the mastermind behind the riots. Now keep in mind, it's 2017. So he's obviously talking about the riots that Antifa was involved in during the 2016 election. And that all began really in the summer of 2015. So that's what Sperry is referring to. He's not talking about the riots happening now, because this interview was in 2017. His story was in 2017. He's talking about the rioting, including the acts by Antifa in 2015, 2016, and likely into 2017. And they continue. Very, very interesting article, don't you think? Obama the mastermind behind the riots, using professional agitators who actually go through an official training course where they learn Alinsky tactics. The very tactics described in Rules for Radicals by Saul Alinsky. You can Google it. Pretty thought-provoking, huh? Now, there was a interview between Joe DeGeneva and Sebastian Gorka on the radio a day or two ago. And I heard it then, I just haven't had time to get to it, so I'm going to go ahead and touch on this now because I do have a few minutes here. And DeGeneva is talking about the fact that he knows that Attorney General Barr knows how corrupt the FBI is and the DOJ at Main Justice and Main FBI there in D.C. You know, the 7th floor crowd. and all the folks there in D.C., period, regardless of what floor they're on. And I think it's a very good argument. And that would explain, remember, we just learned last week when we got the documents that showed all the meetings between Attorney General Barr or Durham and other people in the DOJ. And I went down through the list of the dates of the meetings that took place between Barr, Durham, and various other people. We went through those dates. And we learned from that Barr met for the first time in person with Durham just 3 days after he was sworn in as Attorney General. 3 days after he was sworn in as Attorney General, he tapped Durham and had his first meeting with him as Attorney General. Now, there may have been conversations with Barr and Durham before he was sworn in, when he had been named but not yet had been through the hearings and had been sworn in. We don't know that, but we can anticipate that because the first meeting they had was 3 days after he was sworn in, and it was in person. So then there had to be some previous communications to set that up. So clearly they were in communication even before Barr was appointed, or sworn in, I mean. What does that tell us? Well, it tells us that Barr had obviously been sitting back watching this all go down from afar. We know about those letters he had written to Rodentstein, taking issue with him about the things he was doing and even appointing a special counsel. So it tells us that Attorney General Barr knew before day one, before he was even appointed Attorney General, that the DOJ and the FBI at Main Justice in D.C. was totally corrupt. Because when he came in as Attorney General, he had already made the decision to go outside of Washington, D.C. to get a prosecutor. He tapped Durham from Connecticut. Then, when he decides that he can no longer trust the Department of Justice in the Flynn case, he goes outside of Washington, D.C. again, where he taps Jeff Jensen, a U.S. attorney from Missouri, who very quickly gets to the bottom of it and did so well that Barr has now put him over into Durham's investigation to focus specifically on the leaking and the unmasking. That's what Jensen is now focused on, that part of the investigation for Durham. He's now focused on the unmasking and the leaking. And if he does as good a job of getting to the bottom of the unmasking and the leaking as he did on getting to the bottom of the Flynn frame-up, that will be really good. And I'm sure Durham will appreciate it. And it was obviously important enough for Durham that he obviously went to Barr and said, man, I'm busy as hell here. But there's a lot that needs to be dug into on this unmasking and leaking, and I really don't have the time and resources because we're totally focused on these things. I think we need someone just to focus totally on this, and that's obviously why Barr tapped Jeff Jensen. Hey, Durham says this is really important, but he's too busy to put a lot of resources into it, so I want you, Jeff, to go up to the 7th floor and with your team, and I want you to get to the bottom of the unmasking and the leaking. Then he pulls in, Barr names Timothy Shea to be the head prosecutor over all 300 prosecutors in D.C. Again, he pulls Timothy Shea from outside of the District of Criminals. Another outsider he brings in. And then in the last 2 or 3 weeks, we've had 3 other U.S. attorneys who've been brought in to assist Durham, and all 3 of them come from outside of the District of Criminals, including the one whose name I forget now, the guy with the Italian name, who's the expert. He's from I think he's from New York, and his expertise is in RICO, which means following money. And that probably has something to do with the money given to Papadopoulos by Mr. Tawil. He's probably tracking the money that Mr. Tawil gave to Papadopoulos. So you can see what this tells us is that despite the fact that Barr will give us kind of a half-hearted endorsement of Christopher No Shit Sherlock Ray, and he'll give Rodentstein a pat on the back and a job well done on his way out the door, it's pretty clear that Barr has zero trust or confidence in the Department of Justice or the FBI in D.C. because everybody that he and Durham are bringing in to work on the case come from outside of the District of Criminals. And that's good. Because that and what we've seen from Jensen up to this point, and what we've been hearing about Durham up to this point, and Timothy Shea, tells us that these guys are straight shooters. But I still believe that they, to a large degree, are going to try to protect the DOJ as much as possible. I still place my confidence in Trump. None of these characters. They're certainly a lot better, Barr, Jensen, Durham, Shea, and these others that they've brought in, certainly much better than what you have going on there within the DC establishment at the FBI and the DOJ. But until I actually see people in handcuffs going to jail, consider me a skeptic. The only person I have complete trust in is Trump. And I think that's the only reason why this is actually going to get sorted out. Because if Barr doesn't sort it out, then as soon as Trump wins re-election, I think he'll appoint a presidential commission or appoint his own special counsel. Trump's not going to let this go. I can tell you that right now. Trump is not going to let go until these perpetrators go to jail. It's the bottom line. Now, I think that Barr and Durham probably understand that. And how they mitigate that, navigate that, I'm not sure. But we'll all keep watching. I know one thing. We're not going to learn a damn thing. Well, we're going to learn some things from the hearings with Lindsey Graham this day. But he is going to take his foot off the throats of these perps when it comes down to asking the final pivotal question that would checkmate them. He's going to pull back and let him off the hook. Just like Cruz did at the end of his. After going through that whole bit with Rodentstein, we're going, yeah, that's it, Cruz, get him. Get him. You got him. You got him. Come on. Come on. He's going for the takedown. Here it comes. And at the very end, you get Ted Cruz. But I don't think that you were part of the criminal conspiracy. I just think that you were grossly negligent. Well, grossly negligent, can also fall within certain criminal statutes. It certainly falls within the realm of what you would sue someone in civil court. You can absolutely be sued in civil court for gross negligence. If someone was injured by something you did because of gross negligence, you are liable. You may not have intended to do it, but you're liable. If your neighbor's dog jumps over the fence and bites you in the leg while you're out mowing the grass, your neighbor didn't intend for his dog to jump over the fence and bite you in the leg, but he did. And therefore your neighbor was negligent. He didn't take the necessary steps to prevent his dog from being able to get loose. But he did get loose, and he bit you in the leg. He's negligent. And you can sue him for that. MSNBC just got a brand new national security and legal analyst. Do you guys want to take a guess who it is? MSNBC has just retained a new national security and legal analyst. And it's none other than Loose Lisa Page. Loose Lisa Page. And so she did her first segment yesterday. And you know who she was on with? Their other legal analyst, Andrew Wiseass. I could not believe it. I am literally sitting here watching this, watching MSNBC, this clip, and there is a smiling and snickering and laughing Loose Lisa Page with a smiling, snickering and laughing Andrew Wiseass, who now are paid commentators. Well, Weissman has been for about a year, and now they brought in Loose Lisa Page. And the very first thing she does in her segment is she attacks Attorney General Barr. And she says that Attorney General Barr doesn't feel like he is bound to the norms. And she's referring to how the DOJ conducts themselves in regards to oversight of criminal investigations. Loose Lisa Page has got to be charged. She was a key player in the coup plot. I mean, absolute key player. Top level key player. Top 5, certainly. Right there with Obama, the Rotten Reverend, Comey, McCabe, and Page. Those are really your top 5 from the FBI and DOJ. And then, of course, we still have the stuff that's the smoke and mirror stuff from Clapper, Brennan, the Defense Intelligence Agency, the Pentagon Office of Net Assessment, all that stuff that's sort of in the peripheral. But those top line, top 5 FBI, DOJ criminals who are top tier of the coup plot would include Loose Lisa Page. She is supposedly going to be subpoenaed by Lindsey Grahamnesty as well as Ron Johnson. Now, we've already seen enough of the Graham hearings to know what that's going to be. It's going to be theater. Theater of the absurd, but theater nonetheless. Now, Ron Johnson's more of a straight shooter. Unfortunately, he's got some real slugs on his committee. There might be 1 or 2 guys there that are worth a damn. But they're deep state as well. So maybe it comes down to Johnson. But I don't expect much from these hearings. I think we will get some new information. I think that we will get some people on the record. In fact, I think someone mentioned in the comments section that it's a possibility that Attorney General Barr is working with Graham, because we know that they speak quite often, and that maybe Barr has encouraged Graham to have these hearings to get these people in, to ask them questions so that he can get them on the record under oath without Durham having to sit down with them and show his hand, because he probably doesn't want to at this time because he wants more information. He's not going to sit down with these people until he's got everything he thinks he needs. But there's probably some questions he would like to hear them answer, whether they lie or not, just to see if they're going to lie or tell the truth or who they're going to blame. So it is possible that Barr and Durham, or Barr and Graham are working together, maybe Barr and Johnson as well, to have these people come in and testify under oath, so you can at least get them on the record under oath, making a statement to a question that maybe Durham would like to ask. So there could be something going on with that. I don't know that, but there could be something going on with that. I do know one thing. I know that here in the next short period of time, where are we at today? It's the 5th. In 5 days is when Judge Sullivan is likely going to be forced to either resign from the case, dismiss the case, whatever. The Flynn thing is going to be over here in the next week or so. The Flynn thing will be over in the next week or so. That will be all of it. It will be over. That will be done as far as the attempts to go after Flynn. And what will happen next is Flynn will be going to seek damages from those who have injured him in civil court. I wouldn't be surprised if the Department of Justice just flat out writes him a check right off the top